Welcome back once again with Politics for the Culture. I'm your host, Senator Dwight Bullard. Super excited to have you back for another episode, another conversation for the culture. As I mentioned on the previous episodes, Politics for the Culture is for us and by us. We really want to delve into a deeper conversation around why politics, small p politics, should be important for our community, and more importantly, get some real insight from some individuals who've really had a deep impact on politics in their own right. Today's guest is no stranger to me, one of my dear friends who I met during my tenure in politics uh, years ago. We like to call ourselves the Obama politicians because we're all elected around the same time as our former president. And so, want to welcome to Politics for the Culture the 11th mayor of Prairie View, Texas, none other than Dr. Brian Rowland. Dr. Rowland, glad to have you on the show, man. How's it going?
Man, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be in the presence of greatness.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Please give all my regards to the great city of Prairie View, Texas. You know, for those who don't know where Prairie View is, it's about 30 minutes outside of Houston. Good people, all, and I know a few folks from Prairie View at this point. But Dr. Rowland is by far the one I've known the longest. So kind of let's get into it. I call you B Rose, so don't be mindful. I might slip into the nicknames, but Dr. Rowland for the people who don't know you as well. You've been around Prairie View politics for a long time, right? City council, you've been the mayor of this city. We always hear the cliche term, all politics is local. Mm-hmm. We're in an election year. Why should people in general be paying attention to local politics? And why do you think it's the most impactful level of government?
Great question. First, I'll say that all politics, there's a saying, all politics are local. If communities of color are going to be successful, this electoral cycle is going to start on a local level. We have to ask ourselves as parents, as children, as educators, and as elected officials, people who are leading, guiding, organizing organizations and community. It's important that we find out what issues are impacting you locally. Those issues are going to drive people to either go vote, whether it is about women's right to choose, which is a hot button issue, whether it's about school to prison pipeline, about not funding education fully, or it could be something about voting rights. Whatever issue drives you we should be using that to get people to be aware. So I think everybody is aware based on who we have in office, but there should be an issue that should be driving more people, for those people who aren't naturally involved in politics, to say, hey, I need to make sure that I'm registered and I'm bringing 2 people with me to go vote because this is important.
I hear that. So, I'm down here in South Florida. You're over in Texas. Both of our states have been, all in the national news over the kind of leadership that our states have. We have this kind of weird, I wouldn't even call it fascination, but it seems as though the Black community in particular, right, seems to be very sour on the idea of political engagement and political education, right? Why is it important for our community, for the Black community, to kind of lean in a little bit more and understand the ins and outs of the political environments, like in Texas or in Florida or any other state for that matter?
It's important because naturally there's no one who gets paid to do this, right? To be the advocate for our community. If Black communities don't lean in, right, the opportunities of the missed opportunities are there, whether it's who specifically are going to educate. So we always talk about voter registration, voter education. Who's doing the education? Who's spending their day-to-day job on educating about your community's impact on why you need running water, like in Jackson, Mississippi, right? And how systemically over decades, the failed investment in infrastructure, resorts to this. But then I'm pretty sure there are people who were, again, trying to lead conversations on, hey, we need to be thinking about this, where we're going to get the money for this. And then you have systemic issues within the political structure, whether it's state and local, which also built a divide into this. And so it is important that Black communities like ours heavily engage in things that are going to drive the needle, drive people out, but also change the dynamics in which communities of color are not necessarily always thought about or at the table for opportunities. Infrastructure bill, American Rescue Plan were two intentional federal government policies that came through the state. And now the question is, if you have your state leadership that is impeding local access to communities of color, finally having an opportunity. Some communities had a direct appropriation or allocation. And so now it's just important that we surround our elected officials, but we also have people in the community or help driving this. We cannot rely just on your elected officials. We can't rely heavily on community activists. It has to be a community's effort. Political, economic, and social must meet together, in which we call community development, to move these issues.
I hear that. So, you've had the luxury or the honor of serving as the mayor of your city, right? And so there's always kind of this weird question around Black leadership, especially Black civic leadership, Black municipal leadership, right? Like, people talk about, and, I saw a post recently talking about Birth of a Nation, right? Being one of the most racially and, inflaming movies of all time. Of course, for those who don't know, Birth of a Nation was, critically acclaimed, but very much centered around racism. And part of the backstory was this notion that if Black political power were to get to a point where Black people were in control of government, that government would ultimately crumble. And so I think from that point until where we are right now, right, we still have people who have this misconception that if you put Black people in leadership, that all of a sudden is going to be a problem, or that there's going to be some sort of, corruption or whatever. Could you kind of like dispel that? Having been the mayor of your city, could you kind of push back on this notion of why it's important to elect quality Black leadership at the city level?
It's very important. One, opportunity. Having had 10 plus years on city council, I knew what to do when I became mayor, right? So part of that is this edification of experience and opportunity. And then when opportunity comes, it is now, how do I activate those experiences we had, engaging people in the community, working with elected officials who understood where we're trying to go. This wasn't about where I was, it was about where we was. And we created a mantra called We're One PV, right? Because it wasn't the young people in Prairie View, wasn't the seniors in Prairie View, wasn't the outsiders. It was, we needed to be one if we were going to be successful. And so I push back on that myth because, again, Black elected officials have to operate in which the means of your elected position. And as mayor, we had a strong mayor form of government. And what is that? It was that opportunity I had to be the executive to drive the vision of what people in our community wanted. And it's important that we understand that you need government can't do it alone. Just because you have a Black mayor, Black governor, Black president, that one position can't move the needle alone. So that's where part of the inside-outside game comes in. But we also have to understand that there are rules of engagement. And the more that we understand the rules and understand how African-American elected officials operate in a double consciousness, understanding that for everything I can't get on the mountaintop, but you got to trust and believe that I understand the plight of our people. And every action that I'm doing is moving the ball down the field.
Well, that's it. Well, speaking of moving the ball down the field, we're in the middle of football season, or just the beginning of football season, college football season, and you're a proud Prairie View A&M alum, as I see you wearing your polo shirt on. And
That's it.
you know, congratulations on the recent victories that Prairie View's been stacking up. You know, you've had the benefit of having an established HBCU in your own backyard in your city, right? I would argue that your city, arguably Atlanta, really know how to showcase their HBCUs and really kind of make those HBCUs a centerpiece of the economic development and the growth of the city. What kind of message would you give to like other cities out there that maybe aren't taking advantage of this HBCU renaissance? You know, the Greensboros, the Tallahassees, you name it, you know, the Raleigh Durhams out there that have HBCUs sitting right in their cities that may be an untapped resource for economic opportunity or growth, or more importantly, notoriety and tourism.
So part of it is what you just said, right? We did it in our community. Our number one employer is the HBCU, Prairie View University. And so we have to realize what was our strong point: education, history, and culture. And so when you use that as a economic development driver around whether it be cultural tourism, something that they're using on the Prairie View University's campus, which is commercialization. What are your faculty and staff members on that campus doing to bring trade and commerce from off campus into the community and impact the state? So one, using history, culture. Prairie View's university is over 149 years old. One of the myths that people don't understand and may not realize, the city of Prairie View is only 51 years old. And so we have those opportunities for growing pains, but it is a great honor that we also covet the university because, again, they're over 149 years old, but they also, with the great rebirth of SWAC sports, welcome to the SWAC, FAMU, but also we've had something that's happened outside of COVID. We've had the impact of Deion Sanders and the awakening of the HBCU. Using sports. So entertainment has always been there. Choir and musical theater, journalism, but now we have sports launching HBCUs to the forefront. We have to be astute as elected officials, specifically African-American elected officials in communities of color, to make sure that we monetize that, because we don't know how long it'll be around. But if we build a solid foundation, it's something that SWAC schools, SWAC cities, if you look at every city in the SWAC, majority of them are managed by African-American elected officials. Just think about that. And so if we miss this opportunity in this sports renaissance of uplifting HBCUs, and we forget to connect entrepreneurship and connect the monetary dollars that go with this, shame on us.
Facts on facts on facts. We're going to have a little fun, for the culture in a little bit, but just a quick somber moment, right? We understand that, COVID, George Floyd, the impact of Black Lives Matter has had a dramatic impact on the nation. Mm-hmm. But of course, your backyard, unfortunately, Sandra Bland was one of the victims of, police brutality or incarceration and the issues related to that. Have you seen a positive impact with Black Lives Matter, having, kind of been directly influenced and impacted by that? And if not, what would you like to see kind of come out of the legacy of the tragic murder of Sandra Bland?
I would say yes, and I would say twofold. On the yes side, we have embraced that tragic situation. Sandra Bland was a graduate of Prairie View University. The street that goes into the University Drive, which is now named Sandra Bland, I had the distinct honor in April of 2022 to bring down her mother and sister, along with Commissioner Kendrick Jones and some other local elected officials who honored. We put up a Sandra Bland memorial within the city of Prairie View's Freedom Park, and we had an opportunity to commemorate that moment. We're working on a big park program right now to recognize and do kind of a reflection of her and what she's done. She's put many our universities put the city of Prairie View on the map, but Sandra Bland has internationally changed criminal justice reform. She has the Sandra Bland Act that was passed by the Texas State Legislature and held all counties accountable, which led to jail standard reform, right? And so when you look at that, that's the good pieces. The negative pieces is that the community being stained, or how do young people's interaction or young people's view on interactions with the police. And so some people may be, maybe not understand the way I'm going to say this next piece, right? I just think whether it be black, brown, white, people's respect for one another is not there anymore. I know growing up, I may have acted out in the street, but if an adult talked to me, there's a certain way you carried yourself that is missing. So the respect, whether it be for the police or respect for the one another, is not there, which has allowed to this snowball of, now if I have power over someone, I have to exert my power because a simple misunderstanding that could have easily been resolved with just having respect.
Wow. You said a lot right there, my brother, and I appreciate you for unpacking that for folks, and we definitely want to send love and respect out to the Bland family, because of what they've been going through and uplifting them, in this moment. One of the many names that we have heard, over the years, synonymous with the Trayvon Martins and the Mike Browns of the world. Sandra Bland's right up there, and we want to make sure that we're working to make the positive changes that you just laid out. Yeah. As an honor to her.
Yeah.
But playing around a little bit, we are politics for the culture, so we do have to talk a little bit about the culture.
Okay.
Texas has produced quite a number of amazing artists. Shout out to Queen Bee, whose birthday just passed recently. Beyonce, for those who do not know, because I don't want the Beehive coming for me. They are probably one of the best organized groups that I've met in quite some time. Would love to get them politically organized one of these days.
Absolutely.
But you're a fan of hip hop like I am. I would, I hate to put you on the spot, but I think you might have this already down pat. Between Rap-A-Lot, Swisher House, and so many of the iconic rappers that come out of Texas, do you have a Texas top 5?
Ooh, that is put me on the spot. But yes, I will go with Texas top 5. First I will go with Slim Thug.
Okay, I can see that.
UGK the group.
Rest in peace.
Scarface.
Got it.
Then there was a group. They didn't consider themselves a group, but it was Paul Wall and the Chameleonaire, right? So that's how I get to put them two together.
Nice.
And my last but not least, I would go with members of the Screwed Up Clique. So that's Little Kiki, that's Zero, and a number of artists that has come from Houston. So I will mention the Screwed Up Clique in my top 5.
Oh, there we go. There we go. People gonna love you. People gonna love you, man, after they see this episode, because they're like, this Mary was clearly down. All right. Now I also got to put you on the spot in another way, because you got to defend your state.
Okay.
Barbecue is based on the region, and you've traveled to a lot of places,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm not going to ask you where your favorite barbecue spot in Texas is, unless you do have one that you want to give up. For those of us who want to maybe visit Prairie View or the region. But of all the different cuts that get barbecued, are you more of a brisket, rib, chicken, or pulled pork kind of connoisseur when it comes to barbecue, and Texas barbecue specifically?
I will first say I'm a ribs person.
Okay.
But many people in Texas will probably go with the brisket. And I want to shout out Burns Barbecue, and which is in Houston. And then if closer to our area, I'm gonna give a local shout out to Waller County Line Barbecue, which is off of 290 going towards Prairie View and headed to Austin. And so their ribs are good, but I'm a rib person. I like ribs, but a lot of people like that brisket.
Well, hey, I'm as a fellow rib person, I appreciate your candor, man, and thank you for that. And I'll be sure, as I'm sure the viewers will, to check out both of those spots at your recommendation. But
Absolutely.
please don't try to put your meal on Dr. Rowland's tab when you get there. Before we close out there, Dr. Rowland, I know you recently got your Ph.D. Congratulations on that. In terms of the field of study that kind of inspired your dissertation, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of like what that is? Because I think a lot of that work ties into what we've been talking about. So give you a few minutes to kind of talk about what you've been doing with the research.
Absolutely. So one, I set off on a journey in 2012. I finished my PhD in 2017. At the same time, I was elected this whole time. My area of research is in educational leadership. And so I looked at the emotional intelligence, the impact of emotional intelligence and transformational leadership on elected officials in their education policy. People's emotional intelligence is a construct that helped us to identify kind of where we're at. There are different types of leaders. There are leaders that are transformational. There are laissez-faire leaders, and then there's transitional or transactional leaders is what we call them. And so we wanted to see is if I said that I was a transformational leader, would I do policies that were going to push me to be, be innovative? And so our research, we surveyed over 1,000 or so elected officials and how they looked at education policies and was what they thought they were as being transformational leaders, the same connected to their policy in reference to how they govern. And so superintendents, principals could use this metrics and measure to say, if I have to now go to my school board, I have to go to hire a TEA or your education agency, I have to understand the elected officials or people who are, or the governing bodies, understand how they think, and that will help me to be able to get things done. Many times people don't want to do that, but we also know, and so it was important that we move that body of work. But it was also an opportunity to engage people who are in the academy and bring them down to with people who are practically working in communities around education and politics, and also build a platform and stage for us to start working together. Many times people in the academy get stuck in the academy. And so it was an opportunity for us to bridge the gap of like, we should be working together, because there are not many think tanks, there are not many spaces that when a policy is coming from the federal government to the or at the state house, the impact on Black and brown communities and or education systems, and spitting out data and research that will change the direction in which a person votes or doesn't vote, or objections to get things added that would be more conducive for Black and brown communities. And so we need scholars to continue to go get that PhD so we can continue to add to the body of work, but also change the references. We so many times are using research from other communities and other people, or research that's not there, to try to make a case for our community. And we don't have a lot of we're using anecdotal information or analysis. So.
Well, thank you, for downloading that for us, and more importantly, for being a transformational leader yourself, Dr. Rowland. I want to thank you for your service, not only to the, city of Prairie View and the folks in Texas, but more importantly for just being an overall important leader nationally, man. So thanks for being on Politics for the Culture, and appreciate you being here and chiming in for us.
Well, I appreciate it. Hopefully, the city of Prairie View will continue to move forward with our 12th mayor, Mayor Ron Leverett, as he continues to move the vision forward for our community. We're there trying to make PV1.
Shout out to PV. All right. See you along the swag, my brother.
All right.
All right. Once again, Politics for the Culture is here to inform, educate, and hopefully uplift communities around the country uh, around this conversation related to politics, small p politics. We don't want folks to be afraid to ask the important questions. We don't want folks to be to be influenced in the wrong way. We want folks to influence the culture and politics in the right way. And so we encourage you to continue to have these conversations both online and offline to make sure that your culture and the politics for your culture are impacted positively. Thank you again for chiming in for another episode of Politics for the Culture. Look to see you soon.